Festivals in ancient Rome were an important part of Roman religious life during both the Republican and Imperial eras, and one of the primary features of the Roman calendar. Feriae were either public or private. State holidays were celebrated by the Roman people and received public funding. Games, such as the Ludia Polonaise, were not technically feriae, but the days on which they were celebrated were dies festa, holidays in the modern sense of days off work. Although feriae were paid for by the state, ludi were often funded by wealthy individuals. Feriae privatae were holidays celebrated in honor of private individuals or by families. This article deals only with public holidays, including rites celebrated by the state priests of Rome at temples, as well as celebrations by neighborhoods, families, and friends held simultaneously throughout Rome. Feriae were of four kinds. Stativa were annual holidays that held a fixed or stable date on the calendar. Conceptivae were annual holidays that were movable feasts. The date was announced by the magistrates or priests who were responsible for them. Imperativae were holidays held on demand when special celebrations or expiations were called for. One of the most important sources for Roman holidays is Ovid's Fasta, an incomplete poem that describes and provides origins for festivals from January to June at the time of Augustus. Keeping the feriae. Varro defined feriae as days instituted for the sake of the gods. Religious rites were performed on the feriae, and public business was suspended. Even slaves were supposed to be given some form of rest. Cicero says specifically that people who were free should not engage in lawsuits and quarrels, and slaves should get a break from their labors. Agricultural writers recognized that some jobs on a farm might still need to be performed, and specified what these were. Some agricultural tasks not otherwise permitted could be carried out if an expiation were made in advance, usually the sacrifice of a puppy. Within the city of Rome, the flamens and the priests known as the Rex Sacrorum were not allowed even to see work done. On a practical level, those who inadvertently worked could pay a fine or offer up a piaculum, usually a pig. Work considered vital either to the gods or preserving human life was excusable, according to some experts on religious law. Although Romans were required not to work, they were not required to take any religious action unless they were priests or had family rights to maintain. List of festivals by month. Following is a month-by-month list of Roman festivals and games that had a fixed place on the calendar. For some, the date on which they were first established is recorded. A deity's festival often marked the anniversary of the founding of a temple, or a rededication after a major renovation. Festivals not named for deities are thought to be among the oldest on the calendar. Some religious observances were monthly. The first day of the month was the calends. Each calends was sacred to Juno, and the Regina Sacrorum marked the day by presiding over a sacrifice to the goddess. A pontiff and the Rex Sacrorum reported the sighting of the new moon, and the pontiff announced whether the nonna occurred on the 5th or 7th of that month. On the nonna, announcements were made regarding events to take place that month, with the exception of the Poplar Fuga. No major festivals were held before the nonna, though other ceremonies, such as anniversaries of temple dedications, might be carried out. The Ides were sacred to Jupiter. On each Ides, a white lamb was led along the Via Sacra to the Capitolium for sacrifice to Jupiter. The list also includes other notable public religious events such as sacrifices and processions that were observed annually but are neither feriae nor dies natales. Unless otherwise noted, the calendar is that of H.H. Scullard. Festivals and ceremonies of the Roman Republic. Ianuarius I. From 153 BC onward, consuls entered office on this date, accompanied by vota publica and the taking of auspices. Festivals were also held for the imported cult of Aesculapius and for the obscure god Vediovige. 3 to 5. Most common dates for Compitalia, a movable feast. 5. Dies natalis of the shrine of Vicapota on the Villian Hill. 9. Aganalia in honor of Janus, after whom the month January is named, first of at least 4 festivals named Aganalia throughout the year. 11 and 15. Carmentalia, with Juturna celebrated also on the 11th. 13. 24 to 26. Most common dates for the Cementavae, a Feriae Conceptavae of sowing, perhaps also known as the Paganalia, as celebrated by the Pagi. 27. Februarius in the archaic Roman calendar. February was the last month of the year. The name derives from febu, the means of purification, expiatory offerings. It marked a turn of season, with February 5th the official first day of spring, bringing the renewal of agricultural activities after winter. 1. Dies natalis for the temple of Juno Sospita, Mother and Queen, Sacra at the Grove of Alernus, near the Tiber at the foot of the Palatine Hill. 5. Dies natalis for the temple of Concordia on the Capitoline Hill. 13. Minor festival of Faunus on the Tiber Island. 13 to 22. Parentalia, a commemoration of ancestors and the dead among families. 13. Parentatia, with appeasement of the manes beginning at the 6th hour and ceremonies performed by the chief vestal. Temples were closed. No fires burnt on altars. Marriages were forbidden. Magistrates took off their insignia until the 21st. 15. Lupercalia. 17. Last day of the Feriae Conceptavae. Fornicalia, the oven festival. Quirinalia, in honor of Quirinus. 21. Feralia, the only public observation of the Parentalia, marked F in some calendars and A in others, with dark rites aimed at the gods below. 22. Charistia, a family potluck in a spirit of love and forgiveness. 23. Terminalia, in honor of Terminus. 24. Regifugum. 27. Equiria, first of 2 horse racing festivals to Mars. Martius in the Old Roman calendar. The mensis Martius was the first month of the year. It is one of the few months to be named for a god, Mars, whose festivals dominate the month. 1. The original New Year's Day, when the sacred fire of Rome was renewed. The dancing armed priesthood of the Sauli celebrated the Feriae Marti, which was also the dies natalis of Mars, also the Matronalia, in honor of Juno Lucina, Mars' mother. 7. A second festival for Vediovish. 9. A dies religiosus, when the Sauli carried the sacred shields around the city again. 14. The second Aquiria, a Feriae Marti, also called the Marmoralia or Sacrum Marmurio. 15. Feriae Iovi, sacred to Jove, and also the feast of the year goddess Anna Perenna. 16-17. The procession of the Argae. 17. Liberalia, in honor of Liber, also an Aganalia for Mars. 19. Quinquatrus, later expanded into a 5-day holiday as Quinquatria, a Feriae Marti, but also a feast day for Minerva, possibly because her temple on the Aventine Hill was dedicated on this day. 23. Tubilustrium, purification of the trumpets. 24. A day marked QRFC, when the Comitia Calata met to sanction wills. 31. Anniversary of the Temple of Luna on the Aventine. Aprilis, a major Feriae Conceptavae in April, was the Latin festival. 1. Veneralia, in honor of Venus. 4-10. Ludi Megalensis or Megalesia, in honor of the Magna Mater or Cybele, whose temple was dedicated April 10, 191 BC. 5. Anniversary of the Temple of Fortuna Publica. 12-19. Cerealia or Ludi Ceres, festival and games for Ceres, established by 202 BC. 13. Anniversary of the Temple of Jupiter Victor. 15. Fordycidia, offering of a pregnant cow to Tellus. 21. Perilia, rustic festival in honor of Pales, and the dies natalis of Rome. 23. The first of 2 wine festivals, the Vinalia Priora for the previous year's wine, held originally for Jupiter and later Venus. 25. Robigalia, an agricultural festival involving dog sacrifice. 27 to May 1st. Ludi Floralis in honor of Flora, extended to May 3rd under the Empire. Maius. The Ferii Conceptive of this month was the Ambar Valia. 1. Games of Flora continue, sacrifice to Maia, anniversary of the Temple of Bonadi on the Aventine, rites for the Lares Praestites, tutelaries of the city of Rome. 3. In the imperial period, a last celebration for Flora, or the anniversary of one of her temples. 9, 11, 13. Lemuria, a festival of the dead with both public and household rites, possibly with a sacrifice to Mania on the 11th. 14. Anniversary of the Temple of Mars Invictus, a second procession of the Arge. 15. Mercuralia, in honor of Mercury, Ferii of Jove. 21. One of 4 Agonalia, probably a third festival for Vediovish. 23. A second Tubulastrium, Ferii for Vulcanus. 24. QRCF, following Tubulastrium as in March. 25. Anniversary of the Temple of Fortuna Primigenia. Ilunius Scullard places the Taurian Games on June 25-26, but other scholars doubt these ludi had a fixed date or occurred on a regular basis. 1. Anniversaries of the Temple of Juno Monitor, of the Temple of Mars on the Clivus outside the Portica Penna, and possibly of the Temple of the Tempestates, also a festival of the complex goddess Cardi Orcana. 3. Anniversary of the Temple of Bellona. 4. Anniversary of the restoration of the Temple of Hercules Custis. 5. Anniversary of the Temple of Dies Phidias. 7. Ludi Piscatorii, Fishermen's Games. 7 to 15. Vestalia, in honor of Vesta, June 9th was a dies religiosis to her. 8. Anniversary of the Temple of Mens. 11. Matralia in honor of Mater Matuta, also the anniversary of the Temple of Fortuna in the Forum Borean. 13. Ferii of Jove. 13 to 15. Quinquatrus Minusculi, the lesser Quinquatrus celebrated by Tibusans, flute players in their role as accompanists to religious ceremonies. 19. A commemoration involving the Temple of Minerva on the Aventine, which had its anniversary March 19. 20. Anniversary of the Temple of Summonus. 24. Festival of Force Fortuna, which seems to have been a rowdy affair. 27. Poorly attested observance in honor of the Lares, anniversary of the Temple of Jupiter Stator. 29. Anniversary of the Temple of Hercules Musarum, Hercules of the Muses. Lulius until renamed for Julius Caesar. This month was called Quinctilis or Quintilis, originally the 5th month when the year began in March. From this point in the calendar forward, the months had numerical designations. 1. A scarcely attested anniversary of a temple to Juno Felicitas. 5. Poplifugia. 6 to 13. Ludi Apollinaires, games in honor of Apollo, first held in 212 BC as a one-day event and established as annual in 208 BC. 6. Anniversary of the Temple of Fortuna Muliebri. 7. Noni Capritani, Ancillarum Ferii, sacrificed to Consus by unspecified public priests, also a minor festival to the two Pales. 8. Vitulatia. 14 to 19. A series of markets or fairs following the Ludi Apollinaires, not religious holidays. 15. Transvectia Equitum, a procession of cavalry. 17. Anniversary of the Temple of Onus and Virtus, sacrifice to victory. 18. A dies Ata marking the defeat of the Romans by the Gauls at the Battle of the Allia in 390 BC, leading to the sack of Rome by the Gauls. 19. 21. Lucaria. 20 to 30. Ludi Victoria Caesarish, Games of the Victorious Caesar, held annually from 45 BC. 22. Anniversary of the Temple of Concordia at the foot of the Capitol. 23. Neptunalia held in honor of Neptune. 25. Furinalia, Ferii Publici in honor of Furina. 30. Anniversary of the Temple of the Fortune of this day. Augustus 1. Anniversary of the Temple of Spes in the Forum Holatorium, with commemorations also for the 2 victories on the Palatine. 3. Supplicia Canum, an unusual dog sacrifice and procession at the temples of Juventus and Summonis, connected to the Gallic siege. 5. Public sacrifice at the Temple of Salus on the Quirinal. 9. Public sacrifice to Sol Indiges. 12. Sacrifice of a heifer to Hercules Invictus, with a libation from the Skyphos of Hercules. 13. Festival of Diana on the Aventine, with slaves given the day off to attend. Other deities honored at their temples include Vortumnus, Fortuna Equestris, Hercules Victor, Castor and Pollux, the Camini, and Flora. 17. Portunalia in honor of Portunes, anniversary of the Temple of Janus. 19. Vinalia Rustica, originally in honor of Jupiter, but later Venus. 21. Consualia, with a sacrifice on the Aventine. 23. Vulcanalia or Ferii, volcano in honor of Vulcan, along with sacrifices to Maia, the nymphs in Campo, Opsipiferae, and Ahura. 24. Sacrifices to Luna on the Grey Acostasis, and the first of 3 days when the mysterious ritual pit called the Mundus was opened. 25. Op Concivia or Ferii Opi in honor of Ops Consiva at the Regia. 27. Volturnalia, when the Flameng Volturnellus made a sacrifice to Volturnus. 28. Games at the Circus Maximus for Sol and Luna. September 1st. Ceremonies for Jupiter Tonans on the Capitolium, and Juno Regina on the Aventine. 5. Anniversary of one of the temples to Jupiter Stator. 5 to 19. Ludi Romani or Ludi Magni, the oldest and most famous of the Ludi. 13. Anniversary of the temple to Jupiter Optimus Maximus, an epulum Iovus, an epulum to the Capitoline Triad. 14. Aucorum Probatia, a cavalry parade of the imperial period. 20 to 23. Days set aside for markets and fairs immediately following the Ludi Romani. 23. Anniversary of the rededication of the Temple of Apollo in the Campus Martius. Latona was also honored. 26. Anniversary of the Temple of Venus Genetrix vowed by Julius Caesar. October 1st. Ceremonies for Fidus and the Tigellum Sororium. 3 to 12. Ludi Augustales, established 14 AD after the death of Augustus, based on the Augustilia. 4. Erunium Cereris, a day of fasting in honor of Ceres, instituted in 191 BC as a quinquennial observance, made annual by Augustus. 5. Second of the 3 days when the Mundus was opened. 6. Disatta to mark the anniversary of the Battle of Variceo. 7. Rites for Jupiter Fulgur and Juno Curatis. 9. Rites at shrines for the Genius Publicus, Fausta Felicitas, and Venus Victrix on the Capitolium. 10. Ceremonies to mark a rededication of the Temple of Juno Monitor. 11. Mediterranealia. 12. Augustilia, celebrated from 14 AD in honor of the divinized Augustus, established in 19 BC with a new altar and sacrifice to Fortuna Redux. 13. Fontinalia in honor of Fons. 14. Ceremonies to mark a restoration of the Temple of the Penates Dei on the Villian Hill. 15. October horse sacrifice to Mars in the Campus Martius, also Ferii of Jupiter. 16. Lupinalia, the Festival of Wolves. 19. Armillastrium, a dies religiosus in honor of Mars. 26 to November 1st. Ludi Victoria Saloni, Victory Games of Sulla, established as an annual event in 81 BC. November 1st. Ludi Circenses to close the Sullan Victory Games. 4 to 17. Plebeian Games. 8. Third of the 3 days when the Mundus ritual pit was opened. 13. Epulum Jovis, also ceremonies for Feronia and Fortuna Primigenia. 14. A second decorum probatia, as on July 15th. 18 to 20. Markets and fairs. December 1st. Ceremonies at temples for Neptune and for Pietas. 3. Bona di rites for women only. 5. A country festival for Faunus held by the Pagi. 8. Festival for Tiberinus Pater and Gaia. 11. Agonalia for Indiges, also the Septimontium. 12. Ceremonies at the Temple of Consus on the Aventine. 13. Dies Natalis of the Temple of Tellus, and associated Lectustinium for Ceres. 15. Consualia or Feriae for Consus, the second of the year. 17 to 23. Saturnalia in honor of Saturn, with the public ritual on the 17th. 18. Apponalia in honor of Epona. 19. Opalia in honor of Ops. 21. Divalia in honor of Angerona. Hercules and Ceres also received a sacrifice. 22. Anniversary of the Temple of the Lares Permarini in the Porticus Minutia. 23. Larentalia, commemorations for the temples of Diana and Juno Regina in the Circus Flaminius, and for the Tempestates, Sigillaria. The last day of the Saturnalia, devoted to gift-giving. 25. Dies Natalis Solus Invicta, Brumalia. Feriae Conceptivae. The following movable feasts are listed roughly in chronological order. Compitalia, held sometime between December 17 and January 5. In the later empire, they were regularly held January 3 to 5, but Macrobius still categorized them as Conceptivae. Sementivae, a festival of sowing honoring Tellus and Ceres, placed on January 24 to 26 by Ovid, who regards these feriae as the same as Paganalia. Varro may indicate that the two were separate festivals. Fornicalia, a mid-February baking festival celebrated by the Curie. The 30 archaic divisions of the Roman people. The date was announced by the Curio Maximus and set for each curia individually, with a general Fornicalia on February 17 for those who had missed their own or who were uncertain to which curia they belonged. Amberbium, a ceremony to purify the city as a whole, perhaps held sometime in February. Feriae Latini, a major and very old Conceptivae in April. Ambarvalia, purification of the fields in May. The Rosalia, or Festival of Roses, also had no fixed date, but was technically not one of the Feriae Conceptivae with a date announced by public priests based on archaic practice.